Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. And another edition, one might say long-awaited edition. One might say an edition that was, 5 years and change in the making. Maybe a year and a half in the making. I don't know. We'll get into that. And I'm joined by the guy I've been joined with for all of these. And it's I'm happy about that because we've gotten to string together our collective thoughts about the list in general, and he has been here for every moment, both on and off the court, when it comes to the player we're going to discuss today, and that is Andrew Claudio. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, John. I am excited to talk about one Rowan Alexander Barrett Jr., that's for sure. Not that I haven't had many a discussion about RJ Barrett in some capacity into this mic on this podcast, like you said, on or off the air. But I am looking forward to where he ends up ranking on our list, how he got there, and where things are all standing today. But good to be with you. Good to get to the top, further into the top 15.
Yeah, no, we're almost to the halfway point. I guess 13 is technically the exact middle mark between top 12 and bottom 12. RJ fell a little bit short of that. So as you could see here, if you're just listening on the pod, we're putting up how every faculty member here at KFS, I think 11 or 12 in total, voted not only for RJ, but for all the players that have made our list so far. And I guess the thing that stands out, what stands out the most to you, Andrew, as you're looking at this ranking?
So for those listening and not watching on YouTube, but for those listening on the podcast audience, I haven't ranked the lowest, just for the record. I haven't ranked 17th. The most controversial thing, I guess, that I did, in contrast to everybody else, is I have Emmanuel quickly ranked higher than RJ, which was a conversation that led to a very long episode of KFS Study Hall a couple weeks ago. But the thing that has to stand out, given your history with discussing RJ Barrett and his time as a New York Knick, is you're tied for the highest ranking of RJ Barrett at 12th on this list.
And it's interesting who I'm tied with. On one hand, I am tied with Mensa, who, I mean, my Lord, has there ever been a bigger supporter of any player on any team than Mensa with RJ?
So I had thought about potentially getting Mensa on for this one. I think he said everything there is to say about his adoration for RJ Barrett. There's also another player that I thought it would make more sense to have him on for much higher on our countdown. So he'll be on for that. But yes, he remains the number one person I think of when it comes to not Standum, because Standum has a blind belief in RJ. I do think he understands what RJ is and some of his flaws. I think it's very much a belief in RJ Barrett. I guess the other one you're talking about is that Benji also has him ranked.
Yeah. And Benji's an interesting one because look, we'll get to my takes and perception of RJ in a bit, but Benji is like, you were the best of us. You were the chosen one. And he always has looked at this stuff objectively. I think since Benji came here, and he never hated on RJ unnecessarily, but I also think Benji was also forthright with any issues that came with RJ's game, or lack of development maybe, or lack of improvement in certain areas, as opposed to Emmanuel Quickly, who, again, I'm not sure Benji's the first person I think of when I think of Emmanuel Quickly, but I certainly think of all the times Benji fawned over all the little things that Emmanuel Quickly did to win a possession, win a quarter, win a half, win a game. And he has RJ ranked one spot ahead of Quickly, as do most other people, I should say. He's not unique in that. But again, for Benji to have him 12th also, now, notably, even me, and I'll get to why I have him 12th in a bit, even Mensa, nobody has RJ in their top 10. And yet nobody even came close to leaving him off the list. The lowest ranking, as you said, is you at 12. I think especially 17. Excuse me, I misspoke. 17. I think especially at this point in the list, the lack of a range between high and low, and the fact that, I mean, again, if you're just looking at it on the screen, there's a bunch of 13s, 14s, that's basically it. It's a bunch of 13s and 14s, some 12s, a 16, a 15, a 17, but it's all in the same range. I think that that's notable in the sense that, and I've said a version of this maybe for one or two other players already, but like everybody's in agreement that RJ Barrett is like securely on this list, that he's easily one of the top 25 Knicks of the last 25 years, easily one of the top 20 Knicks of the last 25 years. And yet, I don't know that again, if Mensa has him 12th, I think it's safe to say that nobody gave any serious thought to including him in the top 10, which is let's start there. Is that interesting in and of itself, or is that like just obviously he's not in the top 10? Do you think there's anyone listening to this that thinks that RJ should have been given some more serious consideration by any of us for the top 10?
I don't know what the argument would be for him in the top 10.
I mean, I'll give it to you, but keep going.
Well, so then I just don't know what the argument would be. I think there is a very clear, based off accomplishments, based off of performance, based off ability. I think he's squarely in the 12 to 17 range, like we have it. If you're a little bit higher on RJ, you probably can get up to as high as 12. And I think if you're a little lower on RJ, you have him where I have him, or, there's a couple 16s on this list. A flawed player, came in at the very end of a tumultuous regime, and as part of the Knicks renaissance of the late 2010s into the 2020s, he has moments, which is why you couldn't say he's off the list completely, but the moments never ascended high enough, at least for me, that there's a top 10 argument. And I'm curious if we get some reactions to this episode, what the argument would be, although it sounds like you're also about to make the top 10 argument.
No, listen, I was a practicing attorney for 5 years. I could
go ahead.
I can argue whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument, I think, is this, and I'll try to succinctly, in the time range that we are talking about, which is from the 2000-2001 season to the last season, RJ Barrett has the 5th most points of anyone who has worn a Knick uniform. The only 4 players who are higher than him are Jalen Brunson, Allen Houston, Julius Randle, and Carmelo Anthony. Spoiler alert, 3 of those guys are going to be vying it out for the tippity top of this list. And Allen Houston maybe won't, I'm not going to give away where he is, might not reach that high of heights. However, unlike, Carmelo's kind of his own category because like highs, best player on the team, one of the best players in the league, but also some low lows. Randall and especially Brunson have been here for a lot of winning. Allen Houston, again, during the relevant time period that we are here to talk about on this list, was part of one team that made it, 2 teams that made it to the first round of the playoffs. And that's it, right? In 2000, 2001, got eliminated in the first round by the Toronto Raptors. And in 2003, 2004, got eliminated in 4 games to the New Jersey Nets.
I'm forever going to forget that Nets series existed. Like,
we all will.
I was like, wait, there was a second play. Oh, that's right. They did make the playoffs again with Allen Houston on the roster.
Yes, they made the playoffs again with Allen Houston on the roster. And oh, by the way, hold on, let me just double check this before I sound like a complete ass. Yes, I did remember correctly. He did not participate in that Nets playoff series because he was injured. He only played 50 games that year. And then that was really when the beginning of the end of the end, whatever you want to say it, for Allen Houston as an NBA player. RJ Barrett was here for the We Here season, which obviously they got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, but like very significant season. And then was here for one more playoff run in which they at least made it to the second round, and like certainly should get some credit for being here for 40% of another season, which ended in the second round of the playoffs. And then on top of all that, and I threw this in the Knicks Film School newsletter on Substack, his final stat line in New York, 18.1 points, 5.3 rebounds, 2.8 assists per game. Those, in terms of all three of those, there's only been 7 other players in franchise history who have higher averages across the board in terms of like, they have at least 2.8 assists, at least 5.3 rebounds, at least 18.1 points. 5 of those 7 players are in the Hall of Fame. The other 2 players are Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle. And then there's RJ. So if you're asking me what's the argument that he should at least have been in more consideration for the top 10, I think that's the argument, is it not?
No, I got to be honest. I hear what you're saying.
You're not convinced.
I just like Kurt Thomas leads what in all of these lists for the past 25 seasons.
But now, okay, so now you're making a different argument. But if you want to keep going, Kurt Thomas 8th in points scored. I mean, he's higher in rebounds, but like, I think where you were going, win shares, Kurt Thomas 4th.
Well, so
you're making the other argument. Do you want to stick with
we
this?
could keep going down that road. I think in trying to assess coming into the pod, into this episode, how I can best evaluate RJ Barrett's best ability, it's very simply availability. When I go to his draft and where he ranks in all of the different counting stats, he's toward the top, sometimes the top of all the different counting stats compared to everybody else he was drafted with. But when it comes to the advanced stats and the things that more measure quality instead of quantity, he's in the 18s, or he's in the teens.
Well,
he's around the middle of the draft of the first round, I should say. And it's where he comes on this list as well, where he's toward the top. As we go through the resume, you'll see he's in the top 10 for 3 specific counting stats. But when it comes to how he performed in the lot of minutes that he got to play, there is a up and down nature to his inconsistency. And I think that's part of his narrative, unfortunately.
There is a debate about the impact on winning that his minutes had, or perhaps more accurately, a debate about how much his presence was holding them back from more winning. And then we get into like the situation that he was placed in, whether it was the most ideal situation for him, so on and so forth. We'll get to that shortly. Let me read the resume since you have it up here on the screen right now. Obviously, everybody knows he attended Duke. He was drafted 3rd overall by the Knicks in 2019. He finished 8th in Rookie of the Year voting, and he was 1 spot out from All Rookie. And I remember distinctly the uproar over the fact that he did not make the All-Rookie team. Because, again, if you look at the counting stats, like the counting stats were all there. They were more than enough. And I remember that was really the start of it for me, because I was quite silent. I did not chime in on that debate at all, because I'm like, well, I know what I watched.
I remember one of the first times, I think it was the first time I ever came to your house. I was dropping something off on my way back from Queens, and I was visiting my then girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife.
I remember this. I
stopped to drop something off. I think it was just a cord. And here's the full inside Knicks Film School I can give you. I think I was annoyed that your audio quality wasn't as good as it could be. Yet we had already gotten you the Yeti. We had upgraded your mic.
Hold on, I wasn't doing something technologically correct. I think you must have me confused.
Somebody else,
another employee of Knicks Film School. Anyway, continue.
And this was post-COVID, obviously, but not post-COVID. We were still like pre-we here. And I asked, could I just come in real quick? I'll wear my mask. And like reposition your mic, and we finally repositioned the Yeti, and I showed you how to use it, and I was like, oh good, you can actually have a good mic on this show now. But I remember you saying you were going through the numbers for the newsletter, and you were saying, I don't think RJ is going to make all rookie, and I don't think that's a bad thing. And look, back then there was an algorithm known as twitter.com, now known as x.com, that was debating him versus Tyler Hero. And as a Knicks fan, you have to stand for your guy, right?
Remember that?
And you were like, I think Tyler Hero might be better. And it's like, oh, you shouldn't say that publicly. And then that became kind of a motto or a rule to live by with RJ Barrett things, that you shouldn't say that publicly.
Where I was concerned. Continuing with the resume, first player to sign an extension after his rookie deal with the Knicks since Charlie Ward. The difference is that Charlie Ward lasted through the entirety of his rookie extension. RJ Barrett lasted for, I guess about 2.5 months of the rookie extension. He was here for a year and a half after he signed the rookie extension. So slight difference there. As we just kind of referenced, 5th in total points, 9th in total rebounds, 6th in total playoff points since the start of the 2000-2001 season. And then he was traded into December of 2023, along with Emmanuel Quickley, number 20 on our list, for the guy who is number 15 on our list, OG Anunoby. I'm going to go back to the stat that you were referencing before, which is the stat where you talked about Kurt Thomas being high. Yes, Kurt Thomas, 4th in win shares. And again, this is via basketballreference.com. I want to say very clearly and enunciate these words carefully. As I've said before, but for anybody who may have missed it, win shares skews big. 2nd on the list of win shares for the Knicks of this time period, David Lee. 3rd, Mitchell Robinson. 4th, Kurt Thomas. 8th, Tyson Chandler. 10th, Amari Stoudemire. I could go on. If you're a bit 16th, Isaiah Hartenstein, despite the fact that he played only 157 games here and started only 57 of them. Again, if you're a big guy, this stat favors you. Even so, I think it's worth mentioning RJ Barrett, number 30th on this list. The 3 guys directly in front of him. Number 27, Clarence Weatherspoon. 28, Eddie Curry. 29, Othella Harrington. The guy right behind him, Taj Gibson, who started 64 games to 296 for RJ Barrett, averaged about half as many minutes as RJ over his time here. And then a couple spots back, even though he has played in exactly 200 fewer games than RJ Barrett. 35th in win shares, OG Anunoby with 8.2 win shares, RJ Barrett with 9.2. It's not unreasonable to expect that by the time OG Anunoby gets to game 115, he'll probably surpass the guy that he was traded for. And I think this is where we get into the meat of the conversation. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I'm recording this from my younger daughter's bedroom because my wife we're still operating without an office space here at the new house, and I was kicked out of the usual one here. As you can see, maybe you can see. You see what it says on the pillow behind me?
I don't actually, but I have you in a smaller window, so okay. People probably can see it. What does it say?
That's good to know what you think of me. It says Princess Isabel, and this is. This is the fundamental genesis of my issues with RJ Barrett that went beyond basketball, come from the notion of him being the prince that was promised. And as I say that, I am fully cognizant of the fact that Jonathan Macri, at the time he was drafted, was standing on, forget the milk, the soapbox. Whatever, something higher than a soapbox, which I need because I'm pretty short. Yelling for everybody who was willing to listen. This is not the guy who's this is not him. He is more of a going to be a piece to the puzzle. He's not going to be your top banana. He's not going to be your number 2 banana in all likelihood. Now, I think there were times over the course of his time here where we had some robust conversations. Hello, Robert Cross. I'm thinking of you about what version of a basketball team could be maybe if you squint hard enough, a contender with RJ Barrett as like the nominal number 2. And I remember those conversations. And I think some of those conversations were worthwhile to have. But I never from before he was drafted. I never really believed that was his destiny. And yet it felt like and again, this gets into my perception, and this is where I need you, because my perception, as we know very well, does not always line up with reality. My perception was that was always still the talking points, was like, look at what he's doing, look at the counting stats, look at this, look at that, put him in a better situation, this, that, the other thing. He could be one of the guys. And I was just like, no. And because of the advanced stats, I watched the games. I saw fundamental areas of his game where I just did not ever see improving to a degree, and this gets into, and I mentioned this in the newsletter, some of the searches I did early on during his rookie year and after his rookie year, with the volume of shots that he took and his inefficiency, and just scouring NBA history. I'm like, when has anyone ever shot this much and shot it this poorly? And then when you take the extra step and try to account for error, because the NBA was at its most efficient that it had ever been when he entered the league, and then you come across like one or two names, like a Jim Jackson or an Antoine Walker, a guy we discussed on a recent episode. But it's like few and far between. And so it set up this like vicious cycle where I wasn't reacting to RJ Barrett's play. I was reacting to the narrative around RJ Barrett and his play. And then it got us to the place where I was, obviously billed as the preeminent RJ Barrett hater in all the land. And the biggest reason...
All of the land.
All of the land. Mm-hmm. All of the land. And it's the biggest reason why, by the time or on the day that he was traded, I mean, it was a few days after Christmas, but I felt like it was fucking Christmas morning.
Yeah, I remember. Believe me, I remember. It was the day before New Year's. And look, I don't want to get into how I spent my New Year's, but I think we all know, for those that are in the know or were around Knicks Film School then, what clips were being passed around said website that I mentioned earlier. The fascinating thing about it is I don't think a lot of us disagreed with the opinion that he's not a number one, that I don't think your team's going to be very good if he's your number two. I did always empathize with the notion of they handed the keys over to Julius rather than the guy you drafted third overall. And the RJ versus Julius conversation was always interesting during the 2022, the thumbs down season, because they gave RJ a ton of usage and he seemed to be finding some success. Like he averaged close to 24 a game over the final, like from January 1st on. And it was like, what if they did just surround RJ with space and surround him with shooters and, gave him a 30 usage? Could they be a 6 seed or 7 seed? But then Julius came back the next year, refocused with Jalen Brunson. And look, they ended that season with a closing lineup that didn't include RJ Barrett. It was Quickly and Josh Hart that would come in and close games.
But you're missing an important point.
What's up?
And I think it's the biggest reason, or you brought this up on the Quickly episode, where when you talk about RJ Barrett, you have to factor in playoff performance. And again, we know Julius Randle played and participated in some of the 2023 playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But when I visualize
one leg, yeah.
When I visualize that series in my head, it's Jalen Brunson's the number one, RJ Barrett's the number two. And man, those two guys look like they made some nice music together.
Well, so I thought when you were going to make a case for him making top 10,
that was going to go playoffs.
It was going to be, and that's honestly the sole argument, is that for an 8-game stretch in the 2023 playoffs, RJ Barrett averaged 23, 5, and 3 on a 57 effective field goal percentage from game 3 at the Garden against the Cavs, where for those who you've accurately described who the MVP of that game should be, and it's Madison Square Garden, because they created an environment that a Cavs team was absolutely shook, and the Knicks ended up allowing the fewest points in an NBA game that season because of how shook the Cavs were. But if you want to go back to the intricate details of that game, in the first 5 minutes, no Knick could hit a shot And then the youngest player on the team started taking shots, and RJ Barrett then started scoring points and hitting shots. Went 8 for 12 that night and scored 19 points. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got an RJ game in the playoffs. Some wondered if he may end up playing less than 20 minutes in game 3. And he ended up being one of their most important scorers. And from that point on until the end of the series, until the final game 6 against the Heat, where nobody except Jalen Brunson was hitting shots, they had him as their number 2 scorer, really, their number 2 option. And he was a dependable number 2 option. And I've always empathized with people that use that sample and are like, see, this is what it could have been if you had given the keys to him and Julius was on the trade block. And I empathize with it. I don't think RJ's ceiling was ever as high as what Julius and his ceiling ended up being. And it's why it's a complicated conversation to have. And I think people in Canada are still having it today with the Raptors. Like, what is your team when he's your second or third best player, and how good can you actually be?
Yeah. And look, we're not going to have the RJ Barrett Toronto Raptor conversation. We'll leave that for your boy, Mr. Barhaney up north of the border.
But like, John, that's not to interrupt, but I do think that's also part of the RJ conversation. We still don't know what the right role, the ceiling of where he is on a team. I still think it's an undetermined thing.
And you know what?
Despite his strongest defenders.
He is he 26 right now? I should know.
I think he's still 19.
That's you pull him out every now and then, and it's just like, no, he's 25. He actually
25,
just turned 25. Yeah. There's a possibility that he could be entering his age 26 season, and the conversation is still going, because he goes out there and he has an okay year, and the Raptors are not that great, but it's like, oh, but look, he's, Brandon Ingram needed the ball, and Emmanuel quickly needed the ball, and Scotty Barnes needed the ball, and all this stuff. And we could be, I'm not being facetious when I say this. I don't think it's crazy to envision a world where RJ Barrett is approaching the age of 30. And there are still conversations about, like, should he be a starter on a great team, or is he best as a 6th man, or is like the skill set with the shooting and consistency just maybe not translate into a high usage role in the league at all? And that gets me to, you mentioned the 8-game stretch starting with game 3 and ending with game 5. The part you left out, you alluded to it when you said some people thought maybe he wasn't going to play 20 minutes. That's because he had gone 6 of 25 from the field in games 1 and 2. And then again, he's not the only one, but in a game that they lost by 4 points, game 6 at Miami, he went 1 for 10. And I think I'll just say the general inconsistency of the RJ Barrett experience was so fundamental to considering him as a player and to the RJ Barrett debate, because no one questioned that there were ups and downs. Unless you were just sticking your head in the sand, no one was questioning it. But it was always, is this just who he is as a player? Where you're going to have, again, to go back to the Toronto experience, the first, how many games did he play the first season in Toronto? 30, 40 games, whatever it was, something around there. But he was like a legitimate shooter for that time. And then you fast forward to last year, and then, it kind of fell back off. Like, is this always just what he's going to be, or is this due to the circumstances around him? Look, in ranking him where I did, tried to take a step back from all the stuff that I could never take a step back from while he was actually here, and just consider him as a player. And to what you just made me think of it a second ago, with everything that was put on him when he got here, the fact that this was arguably the most dysfunctional organization, certainly in the NBA when he arrived, if not all of professional sports. And it's like, all right, you're the highest draft pick since Patrick Ewing. Go out there and perform. And like, again, that team had no spacing. I mean, the lack of spacing was laughable. And then that was the start of his experience. And then we fast forward to the beginning of year 2, where we get Tom Thibodeau. I'm obviously a fan of a lot of things that Tibbs did here, including what he tried to get out of RJ Barrett. But what he tried to get out of RJ Barrett may have been different from what RJ Barrett wanted to or thought he was, best at, and thought was his most. And I think for the entirety of the Tibbs RJ era, there was this push and pull between what RJ kind of saw as his best role on a team versus maybe what Tibbs saw as RJ's best role on a team. I think that was a big challenge. I think, again, him and Julius, who mix like oil and water, for as much as they were very friendly off the court, on the court, I'll go to my grave thinking they never made each other better. Like, at no point in time did you watch them and see, unless you disagree.
When he was shooting 40% during the We Here season.
Okay, yes.
But that's, to your point, what Tibbs tried to turn him into was a spacer. And to RJ's credit, I remember that back half of the We Here season where his volume was going up, especially in the corners. And as a result, his efficiency was going up. And he ends up shooting over 40% from 3 that season, which I thought was a milestone. Like, so we saw how inefficient he was his rookie season, and he really worked on his game to become a better shooter. Then again, if you're going to the Hive and saying, okay, let's find where I can give you some brownie points here. Like, you go to his 3rd season, starts off very inefficient, and then in January 1st, and really from that game winner on, he's averaging 24 a game on like fine efficiency on a bad team. Yeah. Then that 4th season was really when it fell off for me after they had given the extension. And it was like, you know what? He's not closing games. And then, but then even that's the playoff season we're talking about, where he has 8 playoff games that we pointed to that I think are the case. And it's why I understood where people were saying, he's a young player that, yes, is inconsistent, but has shown moments where he's getting better when the situation around him has improved, or he's put in a different situation than just be a floor spacer for Julius Randle. And it's why I empathize, but the OG Anunoby trade ends up working out better for the Knicks, and RJ gets to go home. Like, we'll get to it in the categories, but it's one of those everything happens for a reason things for me, where he served his time here in New York fine, even if he was a bit miscast as what the Knicks asked him to be.
And I'll even go a step further with that in terms of like his role here. Yes, he was a floor spacer. When the Knicks were at their most effective, I think he was spacing to the corner and hitting 40% of his corner threes. But they also, at pretty much every game, RJ had his handful of drives in which he would get to the rim, and anybody's free to go look up his efficiency numbers at the rim in comparison to, I mean, forget other players that play his position, just anyone in the league. And you're like, well, this isn't good, except the Knicks built their team around, we're going to have the best offensive rebounding in all of basketball. Mm-hmm. And so they turned what otherwise would have been maybe a weakness of RJ Barrett into like, these are Kobe assists. Like, just get to the rim. A lot of times he would draw the help, and then whoever it was cleaning up the mess behind him. And that was like, that was the Knicks offense. That was how they became, I mean, I know they were in a great offense that year, but like that formula, get to the shoot at the rim, shoot from the short mid range, let Mitchell Robinson or Taj Gibson or Isaiah Hartenstein eventually, like whichever one of those guys clean up the mess. And it worked, it worked well enough. Did it ever get to the point where it cleared the high bar that I think many set for him when he first got here? And that was the other part of it. And we'll get to the categories after this, because I know we're going long. The bar was set high by so many in the fan base, but he always did enough, just enough, to keep that bar that high for them. He always gave you just enough glimpses, just enough moments, the playoff run you're talking about, where people were like, see, it's there. If you just this, and this, give him a chance. And that was again, just speaking for myself personally, that was the worst thing that could have happened for RJ in my mind, because as long as that bar was there high, it was always an impossible conversation for me to have. And the sad thing is, it had nothing to do with him as a player. And that's ultimately why I ranked him 12th, because if you take away all the bullshit and all the talk and you just grade him on what he was and what he meant to this team and how he was able to contribute to winning in his own unique way, I think he is one of the 12 best Knicks the last 25 seasons.
Yeah, I remember doing my own StatHead basketball reference search during that last season he was here, and how bad things had gotten, and how inefficient he had been since that first, like he had a 12-game run where it looked like, oh, this is him now. He is building off of that playoff run, and this team needs to move forward with RJ and look to trade Randall. And then he missed a couple games with migraines, and then that was always a weird thing. He would have a weird sickness and then come back. And when he came back from his migraines in early November, to the point he was traded, it was like one of the most inefficient stretches in NBA history. I forget where I went to, but on that volume and on his usage, it was like Russell Westbrook bad, but in like the bad Russell Westbrook seasons. And so like I have him 17th, and I think it may even be a little low. I still think that I think it's more complicated on the court for me, while recognizing he came here very young and was never put in a guy that lives at the rim, was put on a team that emphasizes rim protection and a non-spacing center, and didn't always play with the best spacing himself, next to Julius, next to a center, next to Elfrid Payton.
I was about to say Elfrid Payton.
You know, like I do understand the argument for, well, look what he was asked to be something when he was miscast as that. But even like, I then push back to that. It's like, well, yeah, he lived at the rim, but never, or at least didn't enough pass out of those drives when the double would come from the dunker spot, or hit, like he wouldn't hit the guy that's in the dunker spot. He wouldn't hit the guy in the corner, and the court vision wasn't there. The guy would get to the line. Like, it's one thing we looked at as a positive. He lifted the line. The guy is I'm looking at his career stats right now. He is a 70% free throw shooter for his career right now. If that's 75 or even 80, we're talking about a significantly more efficient player in his career.
And I mean, it's a nitpick, but he got to the line. He never got to the line nearly enough for me. And I know for other people too, because for how often he was down in that area, it just, like, that was one of those skill things where it's like the great players, you know, or even maybe not the great players, but the players who figure out how to make the parts of their game that are strong, get them as close to greatness as possible. He never figured out how to really draw contact in a way that put the onus on the refs. Like, oh, I guess I got to call the whistle or blow the whistle here, you know? But
it's
again,
only one stretch. It's one stretch. It's that back half of the thumbs down season where he was getting to the line like 7 times a game, where even then the percentage wasn't great, but it's like, oh, the volume's going up, and not coincidentally, it's also the season he averaged his highest free throw total for his career,
5.8, right? Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of volume. You appreciate a guy that can play and is available through his draft class, and we get to the categories, I'm sure, but he's first in minutes played, first in total points. And then you go to all the averages and all of the advanced numbers, win shares, box plus minus, VORP, Vorps and Schnorps, as Zach Lowe likes to say. And he's in the teens. Like, I think he's 23rd in box plus minus, 18th in total win shares. You know, I think there was a young player in the NBA that if he was drafted 10th, we're like, oh, he's developing. But because he was drafted 3rd, a pressure and an expectation and a a fandom for him was created that didn't really match with reality. And I do appreciate his playoff contributions. That 23 run went as far as it did because of him, or partly because of him. I think it's more complicated than. I feel much more strongly. I'm the RJ hater this episode, John. That
I guess so.
He's too close to the top 10 in your mind.
Do you know who is first in win shares in his draft class?
Is that Darius Garland?
Darius Garland is third. Again, win shares skew big.
I had it up here before, so hold on a second.
It's two. I'll give it to you. It's 2 second round centers. Daniel Gafford and Nick Claxton.
They skew big. You are right. But so if you go to box plus minus, he's 23rd behind Kobe White and Dylan Windler, which I'm gonna take a grain of salt there. And then Vorp, he's 21st behind Chuma Okeke.
And for box plus minus and for like Zion and Ja are 1-2 in both of those. But again, what makes the conversation even more interesting is like, again, we're 6 years into all of these people's careers, right? 6 years or 7 years, whatever it is. It's like to this day, if you ask someone who should be the first pick, if you redrafted that today and you get the player starting today for the rest of their career, however long that may be, I think there's people who'd still take Zion. I think there's people who would take Ja. I think there's a lot of people who would take Darius Garland. Is there anyone who would take RJ Barrett?
No. I think if you're going to a guy that has played and you're looking for availability out
Tyler
of
Hero, people with
Tyler Hero or Cam Johnson. No, Darius Garland gets now that I'm realizing who else is in this draft. Darius Garland would get the number 1 pick.
I think he would. Well, but again, it depends on your mentality. Like, how much do you value? Like, how much do you want a lottery ticket in your hands? Okay, we're going too far afoul. Quick break to tell you about America's first ever USDA organic THC gummy. You know the words. Shout out to Cornbread. Yes, Cornbread, the source of your healthy, happy hour. It's a natural and healthier way to experience a carefree moment. Cornbread's THC gummies offer a balanced sense of happiness and relaxation. Well, how do they achieve that balance? My favorite thing about Cornbread is it's just the right amount for me as someone who is not a regular user of these sorts of products, but still wants to get that relaxation without feeling anxious or paranoid like some other cannabis edibles, which is why Cornbread's 1-to-1 THC to CBD ratio is perfect for me. They have 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, which is just the right dose, and it gives me everything I need without any of the stuff that I don't want. If you are looking for a healthier way to enjoy a carefree moment, you have to give Cornbread Hemp a try. They have created the first ever USDA organic THC gummy that is 100% legal. As a special offer to Knicks Film School listeners, you can get 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use promo code KFS at checkout. Again, that's cornbreadhemp.com/KFS and use code KFS for 30% off your first order. Cheers to a healthier happy hour. Let's get to best memory, lasting image as a Knick. This is, I'm sure I'm going to get hate for this, but I'm just going to be honest. It's always going to be, yo, I'm a Knick.
You're all set.
Thank you. Yo, I'm a Knick.
What?
For me.
Oh, his first words as a Knick. Okay.
For the last words of his first press conference as a Knick.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be, you know why? Because I think by that point in the summer, personally, I was already having serious doubts that the Durant thing was going to happen. And I just needed to feel good about my basketball team. And he was so genuinely happy to be here, and not to relate everything back to like my complicated relationship with him. But I think that happiness and that pride in putting on a Knick uniform mattered so much to so many people. It mattered to me in that moment. But then once he got on the court, I'm like, all right, what have you done for me lately? And that just didn't carry through for me in quite the same way. But it is still my lasting image of him as a Knick.
Mine is the buzzer beater against the Celtics.
Of course. What's number 2 on court for you? Do you have one that stands out?
As far as moment and image, him dunking on Scotty Barnes is up there because that tied
the game to overtime
and sent the game to overtime. Should have been an and one.
Should have been an and one.
I think there are stretches, and best memory is that playoff run, like leaving game 3, thinking, oh my gosh, like I have nothing bad to say about RJ Barrett. They really needed him to be that scorer tonight. And as like we'll eventually have the Julius Randle conversation, but game 4, Julius is having a horrific game and doesn't play the fourth quarter. And RJ Barrett steps up as one of their scorers in that fourth quarter. And that trend continues throughout most of the Miami series. So that 8-game playoff stretch will probably be my favorite RJ stretch. There's also the night that he had his first 40-plus point game.
I was going to, after the buzzer beater, that's number 2 for me, 46 against the Heat.
46 against the Heat. And I remember him going 14 of 22 from the line that night. And that being like the closest I ever got to going to the RJ Hive and asking, well, so what are your prices for membership? Like, because I see it now. Like, if he can be a guy that has a game where he gets to the line 22 times, that was a night where he recognized, oh, I'm getting every whistle I want. There's also a thing he took personally was every time he saw Tyler Hero, and shout out to our friends at Fanatic Sportsbook. My advice anytime the Raptors play the Heat will be take the RJ Barrett overs, because he just continues to go hunting anytime Tyler Hero is on the court. But like that back half of the thumbs down season was interesting, and he was one of the few things to enjoy. But that 8-game playoff stretch is my favorite RJ memory / image.
The Miami game's number 2 after the buzzer beater on court for me, because again, for anybody who may have blocked it from their memory, and I don't blame you if you did, the vibes were, I mean, I don't what exists below the sewers. Going into that All-Star break. I mean, they were just toxic, beyond toxic. And so to have him go out there and do that was just like, it was cool. It was necessary. Which brings us to,
should I mute my mic?
I mean, it's so biggest regret, something we wish would have gone differently or better, even if out of their control. I wish I didn't react on Mike the way that I did when he was traded. I mean, I've said that before, it was not classy, and it was like, it was mean, it was mean to a guy who, look, I may have had my misgivings about him as a player over the time that he had come here. I may have even had some misgivings about, did I think his approach to the game was always 100%, I'm going to do whatever my team needs me to do to win. But like, in no universe should that have translated to, I could have been gleeful that they got OG Anunoby, but like glee over like, thank God this guy's out of town. And again, it was never about RJ Barrett. It was about the conversation, and it was about the Hive, and it was about that back and forth, but that's no excuse. So that is my personal biggest regret. As far as like on-court regret, I mean, and again, we'll save it for the Randall conversation. I wonder if there are versions of the future, like the present, actually. No, not even the future, the present, in which I'm not going to go into specifics now, but like, what if Randall was moved before RJ? And what would that trade have been? What would that team have looked like? Like, and again, that's going to come off seeming disrespectful to Julius. I understand that. But it's just like, if I'm being honest, and I was trying to be honest on here to my detriment oftentimes. It is a wondering of mine. It is that I don't have a lot, but I do wonder.
Well said. First of all, I don't have a regret for RJ Barrett. I don't think there are many on-court regrets to have with him. I think he served his purpose, and I think he served it well. You can go to the Julius one, fine. And I even tried to look at, well, what if he gets drafted by a different team? I think if he drops to 5 with Cleveland, I think he still ends up getting traded for Donovan Mitchell. I think
Cavs part is interesting, because don't forget, there were the rumors in the days leading up to the draft that the Knicks were thinking of had to work out with Garland, and maybe there was a trade down scenario or something.
Yeah, but like Scott Perry saw what he wanted and made sure that the Knicks ended up with RJ. I even thought like if he ends up in Memphis, they're probably doing the exact same thing Tibbs did and becoming one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league. And if he goes to the Lakers at 4, he gets traded for Anthony Davis, and then it's it's him in New Orleans with. So that's maybe your best path to a regret that he would have enjoyed, because then he got to go with Zion, and you would have had the Duke brothers.
Well,
in New Orleans together.
I don't think either of the, I think there's one city that both of those guys wanted to play in, and it was not New Orleans.
Right, but at least they would have got to play together.
Yeah, they would have.
I know that they've wanted to forever. I don't think there's an on-court regret. I think, as I mentioned, there's little things you could point to as far as good things. Every year when he started to, like, rookie year was extremely tumultuous around him, but
the Houston game.
Right,
always remember the Houston game,
the first game of the Leon Rose era, where
great game.
He had a great Houston game. Yeah. Shot 40% his second season. Had the back 35 where he averaged 24 a game his third season. Had 8 tremendous playoff games his fourth season, and then in year 5, we were on E. Like, we had reached the end of this, and he got traded to his home city. And look, this is why, again, the everything happens for a reason. His home city, not knowing the worst of possible tragedies was going to happen in his life, and he needed to be home when this happened. And the Knicks got a player that was a better fit for what they were trying to build. I think everything happened for a reason with RJ, and it's hard to really regret his career path, at least to where he is now.
There's one more part of the trade, the irony of the trade, because to your point about the RJ thing was starting to go on E. The conversation, as I remember it at the time, and again, my recollection is not what it was like, is this just a better basketball team if Emmanuel quickly starts for RJ Barrett?
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to get traded together was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're done with that conversation altogether, anyway.
Yeah. There's a Dante side of that too. Like Dante's ascension into one of the better high volume 3-point shooters.
Yep.
And the whole Villanova thing they were building, it was very clear. Oh, this team's probably better if not just RJ Barrett's not starting, but if like Dante had already become a starter, maybe we get another shooter in the starting 5. Quickly's extension. We had that conversation earlier in the countdown, but by the time he was traded, I think the Knicks were ready to move on. I think RJ needed to move on to a different place. And again, we're not having the Toronto Raptors conversation, but he is a national hero there. And they have also not built the best team around RJ. Fits his styles better,
a national hero who, I don't want to say his name appeared in trade rumors this summer, but like, I think the speculation has already begun about like, is our RJ, because he's extension eligible. Mm-hmm. And as of we're recording this on Friday morning, August 29th, 9:04 a.m., he's not got extended yet. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. Okay. Again, gotta laugh. What role would this player have on the current Knicks team?
He doesn't have one.
I knew you, because this has become your default answer for all of these guys.
Some of these guys are too good to just be sixth men, and some of these guys aren't good enough to be better than any of the 5 starters that we're talking about here. Look, I do think there is and I wonder how you feel about this. There is a him versus Josh Hart as far as non-shooters. And what would be better, especially with Mike Brown's pace that he likes to play at on offense? Like, would that be a better fit? But honestly, I'd rather have Josh Hart than RJ Barrett as far as engines are concerned. But I do think RJ would succeed if you had one or the other in the Josh Hart role.
I think I think there is a worthwhile conversation to be had about what it would look like if RJ Barrett was the starting, I guess, 3, although 6 of one, half dozen the other with Bridges, but as the third wing with OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. I think that is an interesting conversation. A less interesting conversation is that what would RJ Barrett look like coming off the bench here if Josh Hart is also coming off the bench? Because that just ain't gonna work. And so, like, to your point about is he good enough to start? I mean, look, as of right now, Mitchell Robinson is this. I think we all think that Mitchell Robinson is going to be the starter. Although there was a report from Ian.
Yeah, you can mention it. Yeah,
probably should mention at the top of the show that, you know, based on his history, I want to again never want to put words in Ian's mouth, but also Ian never says as much as he knows. If Ian's put it out there that, like, you know, the Deuce as a starter might be something we want to start to wrap our minds around. You know, maybe we should start thinking about that more. Regardless, Mitchell Robinson brings very identifiable things to the table as a starter. Deuce McBride brings some very identifiable things to the table as a starter. RJ Barrett also brings some very identifiable things to a potential role as a starter. I don't know if those are the things that this team needs necessarily, alongside the other 4 guys who we know are going to start. Although, again, I think it would be an interesting conversation. That's all.
On the current Knicks team, like, just ask yourself, would they right now even think about trading any of their starters for RJ Barrett?
Well, you can't have the conversation because salaries come into play, and no, they would not trade Deuce McBride and his $3 million salary for RJ Barrett and his 20 whatever. But
okay,
let's say salary don't matter.
Take salaries out of it, just basketball wise.
I gotta be honest with you. I don't have a definitive answer about whether I think I would hope that they would take a meeting about, hey, we could get RJ back for Mitch. We could get RJ back for Deuce. I hope they would take a meeting.
I think the meeting ends the same way, that we have enough engines. And I think, again, this continues to be the RJ Barrett conversation. What is your team if he's your engine, or one of your top 2 engines? And what is your team if he's a complementary piece? He's like not the greatest complementary piece and not the greatest engine.
Hold on. I got to stop myself. I got to go back, because I was leading the charge towards the end of last season, especially, and since the season ended, this team might have an only one ball problem. Between Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, and only one basketball. Andrew, get your mind out of the gutter. OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. It's a shame
I wasn't even thinking that.
It's a shame I have to do this with a preacher's, a pastor's son.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Only one. Really, when you said only one ball. Totally.
We have children listening to the pod. To inject RJ onto the team, no. That would not work from that perspective. So I correct myself. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, we could do another hour on lasting legacy with Knicks fans, our final category. I don't, maybe they're out there, but I don't really think there are any Knicks fans out there who have any bad thoughts at this point about RJ Barrett. And I want to add, I don't think they would have any bad thoughts about RJ, even if last season's vibes were maybe a little bit different. But I think when you factor in the perception that RJ was like, there was a positive vibe around him as a person, as a guy who really wanted it to work here and wanted to be a part of the solution here and do maybe what almost always do what needed to be done to make it work here. Now that I don't know if this is fitting. Now that the Knicks have almost gone corporate, where it's like, man, we're in the business of getting it done. Doesn't matter how we do get it done. We just got to get it done. I almost think that helps RJ's legacy with Knicks fans in terms of how people remember his time here. And as I say that, there are other people who may be like, no, we're a better team now that he's gone. But even if you're someone who thinks that, I can't imagine anybody is going to think anything negatively about him. And on the other end of the spectrum, let me ask you this. We'll close with this question. Do you think that how many people out there, what percentage of fans is RJ Barrett their favorite Knick ever? Or maybe even that's unfair. What are their 3 favorite Knicks ever?
It's probably a lot of young Knicks fans that they showed up to the NBA or showed up to the Knicks. Hell, I wonder about young Jeremy Goldstein on our list. Hold on. Let's say you started becoming a fan over the 25 years ago. You were just a fan for this period of time that we are discussing on this series. I would wager a guess that there are a not insignificant number of fans that RJ is at least in their top 3, even if you've been watching for the last 25 years. Again, it's him versus Randall. I'm sure there is a significant portion because he was drafted by the Knicks, because he was, part of a renaissance and part of what they built here. That yes, there are still many Knicks fans that will have RJ in their top 3, maybe even their top 5.
Favorite, to be clear.
Favorite, not best, but favorite for sure.
Well, you know what he's not? You know what his lasting legacy isn't with Knicks fans? He's not just the guy that got us OG Anunoby, and neither was Emmanuel Quickley for that matter. He was the guy in the trade along with Quickley. I don't think of him that way. I'm not going to remember him that way. I'm going to remember his time here. I'm going to obviously remember the ups and downs of talking about him and covering him. But RJ is always going to have a fond place in my heart, which grows fonder with more separation time.
Yeah, to your point about having no animosity toward him or any negative feelings toward him, it continues to just be the people around him or the people that think highly of RJ, the fans that I saw the Drew Hanlon video come out the other day, and boy, did it cause an eye roll.
Well, I have no idea what you're talking about.
His trainer posted a thing on social about RJ's been in the lab. This is the year RJ takes an all-star leap.
Listen.
And I was like, oh, we're doing this again. Okay, got it. I've been seeing the RJ off-season workout video montage a lot, but that's part of the conversation. You could also just say, oh, RJ Barrett has been in the lab. I think he's going to have a good season, and that's a rational thing to say. I thought he had a really good year last year. And that I think is the cool part for me in his legacy, is that while it was up and down in New York, he's now back home. And talking to Michael Grange last year when I had him on the pregame pod, boy, did he need to be home over the last 2 years with what went on in his life and what happened with his brother. I'm happy for him that he got to go home from the Knicks, that his first experience got to be with us, and we got to go through the ups and downs as we were building something here. And then when we needed to move on and you moved on to the exact place you needed to be. And the cool part about NBA League Pass is I get to watch my Knicks, and then I get to watch my spinoff show in Toronto every night and go watch RJ and IQ and see what they do next. And look, well, the Raptors haven't done any real winning since he's been there. He's been better. And I feel you want to just go stand for your player, go watch where RJ's being better. I give you the Toronto Raptors.
Last question for both of us. Would it shock you if 30 games into the season, the Toronto Raptors are 16-14 and Scotty Barnes is leading the way, having an all-star campaign, and RJ Barrett is considered by most to be the second most important player on their team?
I don't know. Now that means Brandon Ingram isn't the second best most important player,
nor
Emmanuel Quickley. I think that the conversation would be had that he's the second most important. I would then probably look deeper and be like, oh no, it's Quickley or probably Brandon Ingram. But Look, there were our Star J conversations, All-Star RJ conversations last year until but it's mostly because the Eastern Conference is weak. But it's why, look, I'm not going to rule out that this kid makes an All-Star team. One All-Star team.
This kid.
He is still 25 years old, John. He just turned 25. Now, maybe he's now granted. Again, I'm 37. He's a kid to me. Maybe he has graduated from this kid to this young man, but like he's still 25 years old. Like he's still, to the world, not maybe the NBA world, a young player, even if he is technically a veteran, a young person, even if he is not a young player anymore. And I wish him the best of luck in Toronto still, even if they may also be looking to move on from him soon.
It took me, again, really a whole year and a half to get to this point, but I will be rooting for him in Toronto starting this season.
Starting this season,
I wasn't able to. I just couldn't do it. It was all the bullshit just ran so deep, and not only him, quickly too. Every Knicks fan around me was rooting for them the second that trade happened. I could never get there. But I am.
Welcome aboard. We have lunch together on Tuesdays. We have a picnic every month where we just yell about Tibbs and go over every game that we would have won had he not been the coach. And how much better we go through all the different All-Star appearances that RJ would have had he not been the coach. We also have an anti-Julius Randle picnic where we point to if they just hadn't had him on the team. RJ
has got a full social calendar.
Listen, the RJ Hive and the Pro RJ Club, the Pro RJ IQ Club in particular, we're a busy bunch, John. Well,
listen, it should be. Look, I mean this when I say I think it's gonna be an interesting. I mean, this is it. This is the next couple of years are going to define what RJ Barrett is as a player. For as much as he will always be remembered, it's throughout the league for his time in New York. I don't think the book on him has been nearly written, not yet. So we do wish him the best of luck. Andrew Claudio, thank you so much for doing this with me. I couldn't have done it with anyone else.
Of course. Can I ask you one final question? I know we have to run.
Absolutely.
Do you think I'll now project into the future where he's no longer a kid, right? Do you think post-career he has a similar alumni stance, like an alumni position where he's a beloved Knicks alumni every time he's back at the Garden? Or will he be more of a Toronto Raptor? And if the Knicks are playing the Raptors in the playoffs, like RJ is a Raptor courtside. I would imagine it's a Raptor, but do you think he ever finds a home in the Knicks alumni as a beloved former Knick?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
My inclination is to say yes. And I think part of that is because I don't think he's going to be a Raptor for that much longer, because I don't ultimately believe in this experiment that they're doing here. I mean, Jesus, the guy who assembled this team doesn't have a job with them anymore.
Yeah.
And I could see him not bouncing around the league, but like I could see the Knicks, and when he retires, I could see the Knicks having been his longest tenure of any one team. And I think because of what I said before about the vibes generally surrounding him in retrospect, both for the people that loved him when he was here and the people like me who maybe were not as fond, I think he'll be welcome back with. I mean, he's not getting his number retired or anything like that.
No.
Shit, man. Who the hell knows? Maybe he ends up back here before the end of his career.
I thought about that. Is there like another late career RJ, like in his 30s?
I don't think
now
it's
as a
regime.
Man. No. I'm talking like 5-6 years from now, where he's now transitioned to a different point of his career, where maybe he's not a starter, maybe he can come off the bench, and you need a guy that can push the pace and run your second unit which I think he'd do very successfully in his 30s, you know. And look, this is assuming his career doesn't ascend or he doesn't take any additional leaps in his career going forward. This is if it continues the way it is and potentially takes a step back. I wouldn't be shocked if his time with the Knicks isn't over, because I don't think he left on bad terms. And yeah, they love him here. That he is a beloved person in New York by the majority. To your point, like the majority of people that became Knicks fans in like the late 2010s. I don't know why you chose the Knicks, but thank you for doing so. Yeah, there's a path for him to come back here, and I do think there's a spot for him in the Knicks alumni whenever that day comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the many things that we'll look forward to. In the meantime, thank you everybody for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will remind you, as I try to do in every episode, to help support the cause. Go out and leave a 5-star review or 5-star rating, write a nice review and tell your friends about Knicks Film School. Tell them if they're looking for a Knicks podcast for this upcoming season, best live streams, all that great stuff. Knicks Film School is where it's at. We will be back with the next player on our list, number 13. That'll be dropping or coming your way on Monday, right? Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
We should talk about when we record that. But yeah, that's next.
Yeah. That's the next episode. And as I go check the list to see who is next, well, yeah, this will be a fun one. The guy that we have next, listen, they're all going to be pretty special coming up from here on in, because again, we're getting to some of the heavy hitters here. And the next guy on our list certainly is. So you have that to look forward to. Thank you again, Andrew Claudio. Thanks everybody for checking out another episode. We'll be back with more before you know it. Peace out.